Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh and welcome to some more Gran Turismo Sport, a racing game developed by Polyphony Digital and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment for the PlayStation 4. Focusing on the game's online mode, known as Sport Mode, in this episode I take a look at my performance in the 10th and thereby final race of the first stage of the 2019 Manufacturer Series season, which was a Group 4 race held at the Sardegna Road Track B circuit. With that, let's get racing. Taking a look at the grid then, you'll see that I've put it on pole with a 126.0. My story for qualifying, however, was not a happy one, in that, whilst my banker lap was on target, the 126.0 you're now seeing, my two fast laps were compromised. The first one by a slower runner who refused to get out of the way until the final sector, as they waited to use my slipstream for their fast lap. That compromised the entirety of my initial fast lap, despite the blue flags being waved constantly at them. And then my second lap I binned it going into turn 1. In my frustration with that initial fast lap, I went later on the brakes than I should have going into turn 1, went into the gravel and there was no coming back, so I just had to abandon the rest of qualifying and see where my banker lap would put me. And the fact it was still good enough for pole by 1/10 per second was a shocker and gave me the motivation to think, right, bury this race, leave everyone behind and just get that win. So now going into the race itself, the strategy over the 9 lap distance would either be a no stop or a 1 stop. Both were viable, but I found that the no stop was the faster strategy over the race distance, with a total of 4 seconds advantage on average over the 1 stop. The tyre choice was the racing medium or the racing hard compound. I went for the racing medium as it was a very comfortable tyre both for the faster session of qualifying and for the no stop race distance, and I didn't have to worry too much about managing a particular tyre or tyres over the race distance. Fuel saving, however, was important here in order to do that no-stop strategy, and I'll talk about the tactics I'm using to save fuel as we go through the race distance. But now coming down to the final quarter of the grid, all of us being B driver rating drivers, 20 of us on the grid, I was very happy to see that an Audi TT had qualified second, because this Audi TT, as I've previously explained in the race 9, would act as a bit of a rolling roadblock for me, in that over the no-stop, if they were going for a no-stop in particular, their front-engine front-wheel drive configuration will cost them their tyres quite quickly compared to my own car. In the region of lap 6 or 7, their front tyres would need to be managed very carefully compared to my own, because they'd really start to struggle and that caused them to fall off of the no-stop pace, i.e. I'd be targeting 127s for the first half of the race and then moving into the 128s and low 129s towards the end. The Audi would have to drop off of that pace to an extent, and as a result people who are doing a no-stop as well would have to fight to get past them. But the Audi's speed down the straight, as I'm going to try and mitigate it here by running the car in fuel mode 1 to begin with, would be able to keep them ahead of most cars in the Group 4 category, while the Audi being one of the fastest, if not the fastest, in a straight line. So coming up into turn 1 here, I've already gone down to fuel mode 2, because what I've noticed is the Audi wasn't really going to fight to try and get me going down to turn 1. It looks though they've already gone into a fuel saving mode, in the fact I would have expected them to come charging up behind me trying to use as much of the slipstream as possible, but instead they've already seemed to have fallen back a bit, 7/10 back by this point as we go into turn 4, so that means I can get on with the fuel saving and start to gradually eke away from the Audi. That would be my target. By the end of the first lap, try to put at least a second between myself and the Audi, let them start falling back and act as a sign of what's coming through behind on that one-stop strategy, because if the Audi was going for a no-stop, which they've given all the signs of so far, then anybody on a one-stop where they'd have the speed to get past the Audi due to the greater fuel consumption in the car and the fact they'd be pushing their tyres harder will come charging through and then be bearing down the back of my car soon after. Now coming into turn 8 here, we're going to get this synced up nicely for the first time, and that means we're able to charge up the hill here and just pull away from the group. 7/10 still, but as we come through the double left-hander here, turn 9 and turn 10, we're going to get through here very smoothly, and it looks as though in third place there's a Spaniard in a Ford Mustang, and they're already pushing the back of that Audi TT, and the two of them are going to be fighting most likely as they go into turns 12 and 13 to end the lap. A difficult place to overtake, but looking at our rear view mirror, it looks as though that Mustang is going to get the drop on the Audi TT as they come out 13, and charging down the straight now, the Spaniard has already got past, and is going to have the straight line speed advantage due to the amount of fuel they're using, and that now means that I've got a Ford Mustang bearing down on my neck. Now, I automatically assumed that the Ford Mustang would be doing a one-stop because I know that the Ford Mustang Group 4 is a fuel-hungry car, or fuel-thirsty car if you want to phrase it. It consumes a lot of fuel and it makes a no-stop strategy very difficult to implement, all things being equal across the different drivers racing within the grid. So with that Mustang already having taken in the region of 3/10 out of me out of turn 1 and then going through into turn 4, I know they've got to be charging through here. And what I'm hoping I can do is just hold them off a little bit because my car's a bit faster, I reckon, through the more technical sections of the circuit. I just want to hold them behind me until we get onto the start-finish straight to begin lap number 3, at which point they can use the slipstream of my car plus the fuel they're consuming, their straight line speed advantage over my car, which is natural to their car compared to my own, in order to get past, and I can let them race their own race, whereas I can get on with my race, and it's to our mutual benefit. And coming out to turn 8, here we get synced up very nicely again, and we can see that the Mustang, whilst 8/10 behind right now, as we come up the hill, they are definitely closing very quickly. They are not waiting around. And I'm hoping that they're not going to try a very aggressive move going into 12 and 13. If I get a smooth run through turn 11 here, I should just be able to hold them off. We get a smooth run through, we're going to switch to the replay camera to give you a better perspective of what's going on. We can see that the Mustang got a little bit squiggly coming out of turn 11, so that means I'm able to stay away from them going into turns 12 and 13, and down the straight. Exactly what I predicted is going to come true. They're right on my slipstream right now, they're charging up behind me, they've got a very big speed difference. They're going to go around on the right hand side, and as soon as they get past, I'm going to tuck in behind them and just follow them through turn 1, and they're even going to flash me as we're going to turn 1 here to show thank you for letting me pass, I'll get on with my race, you get on with your race. And it was nice of them to do that. I knew straight away that I predicted what this guy or girl was going to do was correct, and so they just gradually make their way away now, and I can just follow in their footsteps for a little while. And here I want to stay on the back of them just for the first half of this lap until they start to naturally pull away, albeit they go a bit deep into turn 4 there, and that allows me to close up because I can use the slipstream from their car, i.e. within that 8/10 of a second window, in order to just gain a little bit of lap time as we come through the first half of the circuit, particularly now going down the hill through turn 6, the left-hander here, then another left-hander at turn 7, the gradual left-handers where you can go flat out, and that extra 10th of a second can benefit me in the longer term distance of the race. But now the Mustang has pulled away to 9/10 of a second as we close up going into turn 8 here, but as we go up the hill they're just going to naturally pull away with a better acceleration, and now I've just got to worry about what else is coming through behind that may be on that one-stop strategy, or perhaps even a no-stop, but they're a much faster driver and just didn't reveal it in qualifying. Next up on the agenda, it appears to be a Brit and an Aston Martin in third place at the moment, and they are closing very quickly at this point and already got the gap down to my car to 1.6 seconds, whereas I think going up the hill was in the region of 2 seconds, now it's close to 1.4, and the Mustang is getting away, they're already out to 1.3 seconds practically. Not to worry about too much at this point, let's just keep an eye on the guy in front and an eye on the guy behind more importantly. As we set at 128.2 there, because we did lift a little bit as we went into turn 1 there to make sure not to clatter into the back of the Ford Mustang, but it hasn't cost us too much time. If anything, it's cost us in the region of say 3 to 4/10 of a second at this point in the race, which is not a huge concern. Now coming through here, let's talk a little bit about the fuel saving I'm doing. One thing you'll notice immediately is I'm taking a lot of corners in a higher gear, such as turn 4 here I'm doing it in third gear rather than the normal second gear for the Honda NSX. The reason is using higher gears will use less fuel, and as a result of that I'm saving fuel going through most corners by using one gear higher than I should be using. On top of that, you'll notice that I'm shifting up in the region of 7,000 RPM every time rather than at 7,500 RPM. Now the Honda NSX's torque curve and acceleration curves are interesting in that it gets its maximum power between 6,500 and 7,500 RPM. So shifting up at 7,000 RPM in the middle of the rev bar in the centre bottom of the screen actually means I'm getting half of that maximum engine power region to my advantage. Not the full amount, but it means that I can save a little bit of fuel but get the most out of my engine nonetheless. And finally, on top of that, I'm running the car in fuel mode 2, which is saving a little bit of fuel naturally over each lap, albeit that's a small percentage, as the Aston Martin behind goes out on the grass coming out to turn 11 and spins out, meaning that we're not having to worry about them, as now we've got a Frenchman, also in a Honda NSX, bearing down on us, 1.3 seconds away and closing very quickly. I know automatically they've got to be going for the one-stop strategy, because if they were on a no-stop, they'd be matching me for pace most likely, albeit perhaps a tiny bit faster, but not faster by 3/10 going down the start-finish straight. So as we come into turn 1 for the 5th time at this point, I'm expecting to see both the Ford Mustang and the NSX behind me dash into the pits at the end of this lap. What I'm thinking is that NSX is closing down quite quickly at the moment, albeit they've lost a bit of time to myself coming through turns 2 and 3, and so I'm hoping I'm able to hold them off before we get onto the start finish straight. But if I've got to let them through, I'll try to let them through before we get into turn 12, because I don't want them to come down the side of my car going into turn 12, because it gets very messy going through that corner if you're fighting, and it can lead to people picking up penalties. Still, it looks as though we're able to keep just enough distance from them for the time being, and the Mustang in front hasn't really pulled away too much, so at this point I was actually thinking to myself, hold on a second, is the Mustang throwing me a dummy somehow? But then I reminded myself, no, they can't be throwing me a dummy, because that car's so thirsty on fuel, and they are quite far back compared to myself in terms of qualifying pace, meaning that they're not going to be that much faster if they're going for the no-stop compared to myself at the minimum. So little doubts were creeping into my mind in terms of people's strategies, but then I put myself at ease and thought, just get on with it, you know what you're doing. So looking behind at the moment in the rearview mirror, the NSX is getting closer and closer. They're well in the slipstream zone, but 4 tenths behind, they're not going to go for a lunge going into turn 12. That would be absolutely reckless. As we come through 13 here, we see the Mustang dashes into the pits, and we also see the NSX dashes into the pits. Our predictions of strategy come true, and now we've just got to wait to see where that TT comes through behind us, and the gap is 3.3 seconds. So it's been a very successful first half of the race. As we go on to lap number 6, we've got a nice gap to the TT behind. We don't have to worry too much as everybody else dashes into the pit, those who are on the one-stop strategy, and those who are on the no-stop gradually regain the positions that they've lost over time. Now it's a case of how quickly can the one-stop drivers move up the grid. But assuming that it's in the region of 3.6 seconds, well 3.7 seconds between myself and second place, the guys who've gone for a one stop, I believe the pit stop was in the region of 25 seconds of time. So what you can imagine is that the Ford Mustang being 2.5 seconds at most ahead of me going into the pit, they're going to be coming out in the region of 23 seconds behind me at this point. And based on the fact that I found that over each lap, roughly the no-stop lap would be in the region of 2 to 3 seconds slower than the fast lap, i.e. the one-stop lap, they're not going to be gaining that ground over the rest of the remaining race distance. So it's just a case of driving it consistently now and managing it. Now one thing I should point out as well, and perhaps hasn't been made clear, you will remember that at the start of the race I ran the car in fuel mode 1 for a brief period of time to make sure that the Audi TT could not catch me going into turn 1, or do my best to keep it at bay. I've actually made it so that my fuel saving strategy here was able to give me a little bit of fuel remaining in case I had to do some fighting at the end of the race, and I calculated it so that if I wanted to, I could run an entire lap in fuel mode 1 shifting at 7,500 RPM, so maximum engine power being used and maximum fuel power being used as well. And by having that little bit in reserve, I could apply that at the start of the race as we switch over to the replay camera now for 2 laps just to see how the NSX goes through the circuit from a third person perspective. But by having that additional fuel available, it gave me a little bit in reserve to feel comfortable. If I do feel a bit of pressure, I can always up the wick for just 1 lap and push a little bit harder. So I've always got that to use, albeit I haven't really needed to use it bar at the very start of the race. And I must admit, I absolutely love this circuit. We had, I believe it was race 5 on this circuit in reverse, which was a sprint race in the Group 4 NSX, and it was an absolutely pleasant race where we won that one. And here so far, everything has been in our control. Qualifying perhaps wasn't, but the race itself has been absolutely pleasant. And this track is a fantastic circuit, one I can strongly recommend. You just flow through these corners so nicely, and the fact that we're doing it in the forward direction, I actually prefer it in this direction compared to the reverse. It's a much nicer circuit on top of an already very good circuit when we're going in the forward direction, especially this sweeping left-hander here, or the double left-hander really. Turn 9, turn 10, and then up into turn 11, which is a corner which can be a bit difficult if you get it wrong in terms of your entry point and holding it tight to the apex, but we get it smooth there, much like the previous laps, and we just got to keep putting in the time as we come around now to turns 12 and 13, making sure not to overstep the apex too much, albeit it weren't as tight as we could have been there, but now onto that start-finish straight to begin another lap. As we come charging across the line here, did I have any thoughts about how people could unpredictably start closing up towards me now? No, because I'd done the maths in my head. I thought to myself, unless that TT's really been sandbagging themselves and saving a lot of fuel going into these final couple of laps and really manage their tyres well in those opening stages, which would be difficult to do, I've got nothing to worry about now. I've just got to get it right. Now the laps, now the fuel saving, and don't make any silly errors. As we come round again, going into turn 4 here, just enjoy this final race of the first half of the season. It's been a joy to run the car so far, and I reckon that the second half of the season is going to be even more intense and the competition will be stepping up. Albeit it has been tough competition so far, perhaps not as visible in this race or a number of races, but trust me, I am feeling the pressure of the competition. And even right now in this race, I was thinking to myself, we've got to get it right. You've got to now every lap get it right, because I don't want people to catch up to me. I want to be leading. I want to run away as much as possible. Not to the point that I'm going to throw myself into an unforced error, but you get the picture. I don't want to let up for 1 second. I want the win. I want the points. Coming around then through turns 9 and 10 once more and then up into 11. One thing I did find a bit difficult around this circuit was the fact that a lot of corners here, because you had to nail the apex correctly, if you attacked it in the wrong angle or turned in a little too late or a little too early, it could be a bit difficult. I spent a lot of time figuring out where the grip would be on each corner, so that way if I did miss the apex at all, I knew how much throttle I had to lift off of or how much brake I had to apply to get things back on track. As we switch back to the onboard camera now to complete lap 8 and we now move on to lap 9, and you're going to see an example of us getting it wrong and not hitting the apex correctly and not getting our brake point correctly. As we go into turn 1 here, you'll see that I'm braking down into 3rd gear, carry a little too much speed coming through the corner, and I just let the car drift over onto the gravel, albeit it's only 2 wheels on the gravel, and I didn't stamp on the accelerator immediately, which means I didn't spin the car out. And looking at the tyre wear in the bottom left hand corner of your screen, you can see that front right tyre in particular has been severely abused over the course of this race, because there are a lot of left hand turns on this circuit. And so I did expect that the front right tyre in particular would suffer compared to the others. Particularly the comparison of the front and the rear, you can see just how much wear has gone through the front tyres here. What of us running a -3 brake balance from what I remember. But really now with 9% fuel remaining, I've got tons of fuel that I can use if I want to, if I feel under pressure, but the gap between myself and second is almost 6 seconds now, so I can afford just to take it easy. We can see that our previous lap was a 1:29.0, creeping into those 1:29s now. As I said in my initial strategy analysis, that was the target. I 1:27s initially, then the 1:28, and then up into the 1:29s to wrap up, and we're hitting it right on the head here. We've just got a couple of corners to go, turn 11. Going to have to be a bit careful because the tyre wear does come into effect and you start to drift more, and the same through 12 and 13, but let's take it nice and easy in 3rd gear through here. Let's switch up to fuel mode 1, get maximum acceleration, use all of our fuel up here as we go across the line to finish in 1st place and wrap up the season half so far. Having had time to reflect, this was the perfect way to wrap up the first half of the season, in that it means that I've secured my 8th podium in 10 races, 5 of those being wins, and as you'll see on screen now, it moved me up to 12th for Honda in the Europe, Middle East and African region. And now going into the second half of the season, I really do want to try and finish as close as possible to the top 10, as there's a very small gap between myself and 11th place, whereas the gap to 10th upwards is significant, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think I can pass that gap or close it enough over the next 10 races. But to be the best of the rest outside those star driver positions is the target now, and I'm going to go for it with every possible bit of vigour and driving ability. So with that, we'll need to move on to the first race of Stage 2 at the Red Bull Ring circuit this coming Saturday, the 3rd of August 2019. But until then, as always, thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like, comment or subscribe for future episodes. I have been TX141, and until next time, take care and drive safely.